A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. So today we want to look at the topic of wound healing and scars with you, and what can be done to ensure that recovery or regeneration takes place faster and more effectively. For that, I invited the health analyst and expert from Spain. A warm welcome, dear Per Zeebergs. Thank you for having me. My pleasure. I'd like to tell you a story. I had to have a filling. About 2 hours after placing the filling, the anaesthesia stopped working at some point. We all know the feeling. It starts to throb, there is pain, and then I did what you told me. I flooded this spot with electrons. So I put energy into it, with the conclusion that within 2 minutes the pain was gone. I did that for half an hour. Then I added electrons for another 2 hours in the evening. I had no more pain, no inflammation, no swelling. And after 48 hours, the dentist said, that's impossible. He could take the stitches out, it wasn't even red anymore, it wasn't inflamed. Nothing, a completed process. Now, I'd like to look at this with you. Every dentist should know that. In theory, yes. I wonder what health ministries are doing today. All kinds of artificial things are made there, but things that have been known for 60 or 70 years, or that the greatest scientists of all time actually knew, are somehow forgotten. And Tesla was the absolute number one for me. He always said that if you want to talk about the secrets of the universe, or want to discover them, you have to talk about energy, vibration, frequencies, about nothing else. And that's how he did it back then. He also discovered the scalar wave back then. And he could actually do everything. He invented the remote control, the electric motor, everything. And he was also an unknown healer. There'll be a book about it soon. What he has achieved medically, what has been achieved with his devices, his technologies. Yeah, that device behind him is unforgettable. And also the giant cores, where he fired electrons at himself. He had a good friend, that was Mark Twain. When he ran out of ideas for books, he came to him. It was an incredible inspiration. We also know, but many don't know that either, in schools for the disabled in Stockholm, Tesla had built coils into the walls. And the children didn't know in which room they were. They were disabled children, and after a year the director said, if we continue like this, the disabled children who were in the room where the coils were will overtake the healthy ones with their intelligence. And then Tesla demanded that basically all schools should have such devices, simply to use the potential that we really have. Because we actually don't use our brains at all, simply to use the potential that lies dormant in us. And we also have a potential of regeneration and recycling and healing. That has to do with energy and frequencies. I have a very good example. I sent a few people to him at the time. His name is Mohammed Khalifa. Do you know the name? Yes, I know. In Helene, there's now a Dr. Uffner, and he passed it on. He could use his hands. That was very controversial. To heal severe muscle injuries, ligament injuries, torn ligaments in just 1 hour. I sent someone there who'd a completely destroyed knee. After an hour, he was done. And the medical university in Graz was incredibly skeptical. And said, we really want to test it now. Then they sent 13 people with crutches with freshly torn ligaments. 12 of them walked out without crutches. And today they're examining how it works. It's all about energy. And he was portrayed as a miracle healer. And he said, I'm not a miracle healer at all. I only use the knowledge of quantum mechanics, quantum physics. I managed to motivate the body and give so much energy that healing takes place at the speed of light. And processes in the body are much faster than the speed of light. He said that himself. And this Dr. Uffner, he's now putting that into scientific studies. It will come sooner or later, you can multiply that, but it's the same background. It's about energy, about electrons. It's about fantastic blood flow, and that's what you did. And I had exactly the same experience in my cell energy centre. So with people who were about to have dental operations, really difficult ones, there was a very attractive lady who's 63. I once mentioned that she was 65, so she complained about me. In any case, she had a very serious jaw operation. In fact, they had to prepare the jaw for a dental implant, so a bone structure. I don't even want to hear all that, but I know the jaw was open for about 3 hours. And the dentist said to her, she doesn't have to imagine that she can be around people for the next week because so-and-so. She was with me the day before the operation. We then irradiated the area for half an hour, and then I said to her, be sure to come immediately after the operation. She then dragged herself to me. We irradiated the area for 30 to 45 minutes. The next day the jaw was maybe 2 millimeters swollen. She had a bruise, nothing else. I have several such cases, or mosquito bites or something, even up to snake bites or similar. Everything in that context. A mosquito bite is ultimately an inflammation. It turns red. And everything that turns red has an electron deficiency. So the cell is lacking energy, and now we put electrons in from the outside. So this cell membrane potential that has lowered goes up immediately. The pain's gone. I have to bring this electrical cell membrane voltage up through electrical impulses, which we can do with a cell tuner. And wound healing also has a lot to do with an extremely good oxygen supply. Many people have very slow-moving blood, not good in terms of viscosity, with rouleau formation and such. That's why people have high blood pressure. Many of them get diabetes as a result. I need to have a good blood flow rate. This means the oxygen transport must be good. And then when I bring this energy in there, I have an extremely good oxygen transport. Oh, not just electrons, but also oxygen, H3O2, right? Because the flow rate is higher, more oxygen will be transported. And then, of course, hexagonality also plays a role. For example, if I have good flow rates and I have hexagonal structures in the body fluids, the transportation of everything is improved. Or the function of enzymes or hormones. For example, every protein, for example in the blood plasma, is enclosed by approximately 70,000 water molecules. Now, I have bad water, processed water that's no good. How is that supposed to work well? But if I have hexagonal water here with ideal transport options, with ideal cell penetration, then I can ideally transport everything that the wound needs for wound healing, because the body gives signals. For example, the body then sends hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, to the wound to kill pathogenic germs, viruses, bacteria and so on. It does that completely independently. Of course, it does that much better when I have an optimal flow rate. And then I have the H2O2 in the wound. What happens then? It's a signaling device to the immune system that proteins need to come to do the rest. It all has to do with information. So H2O2 is an excellent signaler for this. And that's where I basically need the energy, where I need the hexagonality, where I need a good flow rate, where I need a good oxygen supply to get optimal wound healing. If someone can do it with their hands, we can do it with technology, especially if we can refer to Nikola Tesla. Let's stick with this Tesla technology. I know from history they had spread very widely his medical devices. I think by 1938 there were hundreds of thousands of devices on the market. I found out in the meantime why they all disappeared in 1938. Do you know? The Nazis banned them. That's what I know. Yeah, they did. Exactly. But it was because Lakhovsky, who'd made the advancement, and Tesla were both of Jewish origin. It's very interesting that you say that. Many people heard of Dr. Otto Warburg. Dr. Otto Warburg received the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1931, also a Jew. He then said later, it received the Nobel Prize for something else. He then said later, in an alkaline, oxygen-rich environment, no disease can exist, not even cancer. I only say that because there was also a Nobel Prize given for that last year. Dr. Otto Warburg was Adolf Hitler's health advisor. Really? He kept him because he was obviously incredibly afraid of such serious illnesses. Very interesting. The technology was gone. It's actually back now, and I've done a few experiments myself. I like to do experiments. I recently had someone here who had a PSA value of 12, so he had prostate problems. He then said to himself, I just want to add electrons. Let's see what happens. And indeed, after 2 weeks, the PSA value was 8. I couldn't stop being amazed at how the miracle of the human body reacts to electricity, to electrons. You know, the whole body, we'll talk about it again. We're actually energy beings. From A to Z, we are energy, and it's always about energy. And energy is ultimately information. There are people who say the currency of quantum physics is information. That is known. And everything that heals is basically solely on information. Now, I just have to put the correct information where it's needed. And how is health defined? Health is defined with energy flow plus cell communication. That means cell communication must also be good. For example, I shouldn't have a vitamin D3 deficiency because that's important for cell communication. But the mitochondria, for example, which are our energy cells, also have a job. The job is called cell communication. In electromagnetism, there are information particles, messenger particles. These are the photons. What do the mitochondria do? They work on the second adenine chain of adenosine triphosphate, our fuel, and attach the photons as sources of information. So then information comes to the other cells wherever they have to go. Everything has to do with cell communication. We strengthen that with this technology from Tesla, that we import the necessary native original information everywhere. The information our cells had when they were healthy. That means we're doing a reset on the cellular information level, and that's the most important one. So it's actually not just an electron provider, is it? It's also an information provider, very important. There are the most important information frequencies on it, and we've already talked about it in order for them to have an effect. These information frequencies must be in phase with the natural frequencies that they have. And when they're in phase, they're placed on top of each other. This is called constructive interference. If they're out of phase, I might have destructive interference. I neutralize vibration, so I can even take out energy. But as a rule, I want to supply energy. So I need them to be in phase. With your example, he got it on the prostate. By the way, another aspect of wound healing or injuries, we add electrical impulses with a cell tuner. They go where the lowest electrical resistance is. So the weakest spot to the weakest spot, because that's where it can flow best. And in the weakest spot, if there's inflammation or something, what happens when you activate the mitochondria so much? They generate heat. And now, if I don't know exactly where the muscle problem is, it may hurt here, but the problem may be elsewhere, then I can basically use this cell tuner as a diagnostic device and see, and follow this with a thermal imaging camera, where is it becoming the hottest? And when I treat there, I'm on the point. Because that's where the energy flows to, where it's needed most. Yes, I tested that too, put it in a few places on my body, and said, oh no, it gets warm in certain places, where I don't like it. But there are places where I can hardly know anyone for whom it doesn't get warm. There are a few, so as a rule the root chakra, or ears too. When people have inflammation and that kind of thing, it's absolutely awesome. So as I said, more oxygen supply. That's why, for example, when I'm overacidic, why is hyperacidity bad? With hyperacidity, I have a lot of H3O plus charged ions, right? So again, a deficiency of electrons. Yeah. So I have H3O plus charged ions, and when they occur more often, they have their own vibration. And when they vibrate in phase, this oscillation of the amplitude increases. It becomes more and more energetic the more acidic I get. What's happening? This vibration changes the three-dimensional geometry of enzymes and hormones. They can no longer do their job. And that's why it's so important to get rid of this hyperacidity and have hexagonal water in there. And proteins are surrounded by between 15 and 70,000 water molecules. And now I have some that change the geometric structure, but negatively. Then enzymes and hormones can no longer really function. Yeah, but back again, somehow it's all so logical. When the body has a weak point, then repair processes are necessary here, which use an incredible amount of energy. And that spot, for example, on the hand or knee, pulls it from the whole body to do this process. But if I now supply the building material or the energy for it, from the outside it doesn't have to take it from the body, but it goes fast, like with me here, or with a gentleman with a prostate, or I've also had people with rheumatism. They drink a bottle of white wine every evening and wonder why they have rheumatism, but still, the pain was unbearable and they added electrons, the pain was gone. Of course, that's the maximum support of nature, although I'm also of the opinion that nature is absolutely brilliant. If you look at the complexity of nature, what's going on in our body, one cell has 10 or 15 actions per second. However, I have 90 trillion cells. I have 200 quintillion mitochondria. And what we always forget is the bacteria. We have 10 times as many bacteria as we actually have cells. So if I have 90 trillion cells, I have 900 trillion bacteria in me. I have to reach them somehow. I reach them with energy. So we humans don't have to become germ-free. We are an ecosystem. We cannot live without these bacteria. And we also have a few viruses that we shouldn't kill. And then there are others that we should kill. But the body could take care of everything if it has enough energy. Wound healing too. If it has enough energy, then I have the body systems. I support it from the outside. It couldn't be better. With scars, I also had a gentleman here lately. He had a scar back here. Then he added electrons there, but it didn't get warm there. It got warm back here. That was exactly that. So it was red too, the scar. That means red has a lack of electrons, so inflammation processes. Electrons go to the inflammation process, and the healing process is accelerated. And of course, with these electrons, I basically make the body fluids on this point hexagonal. And we know that this hexagonality means free electron plasma, so delocalized. Hexagonality, which means I also have more oxygen at that point. The water structure already has a higher percentage of oxygen. Plus, if there's also blood, the blood can deliver much more oxygen because the blood is thinner and has a higher capacity for the absorption of oxygen. By the way, a huge disadvantage of 5G is precisely this aspect. That's why the people in Wuhan, there used to be film recordings in which they collapsed just like that from 1 second to the next. It's nothing to do with the virus. The point is, 5G reduces the absorption of oxygen and hemoglobin. So, if they had a temporary lack of oxygen, it's a coincidence that we had 5G and the virus at the same time. What you're just saying is stubbornly stuck in the information field. I've already read that too. But also with birds that just suddenly fall down. Whether that's true or not, true was not mentioned, but you read it persistently. What I just find regrettable in the entire health system, that things are no longer checked for their damage to health. There was a hearing from a senator in the USA. The CEOs of various telecommunications companies were there. And then they said quite clearly they had to admit that they didn't put a single dollar into a study whether this is potentially harmful to humans. Well, thank God I'm allowed to live here in Switzerland. This 5G has now been stopped in Switzerland for the time being. The Federal Council would like to carry out further investigations, also look at study results or have them done before we continue here. I think that's incredibly sensible. It works in our country. In Germany, I read that many billions meant for Corona are now going into the expansion of 5G, although I don't understand this connection at all. Well, I can't imagine that. I just know that Germany Telecommunications or whoever was the bidder basically spent 6.5 billion for the 5G licenses. And as I said, it's not been proven that it's not harmful. On the contrary, we are energy beings. Everything that is electromagnetic waves is absorbed by us. We're an antenna system from top to bottom, from brain to heart, to everywhere, down to the mitochondria. That must have an impact. The question is, the dose makes the poison. We talked about it before. The dose in electromagnetic waves is defined by saying radiation intensity as amplitude, duration of exposure, and then individual tolerance. It's fine for one person, but to every other person, it's not. I know. I recently had a doctor here who is really well versed in electric smog and 5G, Dr. Joachim Mutter. And he had said a sentence here in the studio, I still can't get it out of my head. The young generation is the first generation that will not survive us old ones because of all this 5G. I hope he's not right about that. No, definitely not. But it's stuck, this sentence. But anyway, let's get back to electrons. I'd like to ask you to do another experiment here so that we can see how electrons can be added to the body. And for that, I have a neon tube here. And ultimately, as we know, it needs energy impulses. May I ask you? It works, right? Demonstration effect, demonstration effect. And now put it on completely. That means the closer you get, the more energy is transferred. So that means I can also have a deep influence on a wound healing process from the outside. And the closer I get, the more I can act or I get more in depth. But if, for example, I want to do wound healing, there are two aspects that you have to consider. Perhaps I'll put it very closely to the wound once, but maybe I'll also got really hot too. Leave a certain distance so that I can better address the skin surface. I get to the deeper layers of tissue if I lay it on completely, and with a bit of space, we also have spaces for it, like rings, that you may be half a centimetre away. Then the surface of the skin, for example, with neurodermatitis, right? If it hurt, it would be better to keep a little distance. Maybe back to 5G again. One disadvantage is simply that we have many more free radicals in our body. With free radicals, we come to hyperacidity. Free radicals are good for nothing because we damage the mitochondria. We basically damage everything. The cell membrane, which damages the metabolic processes. Then I have more toxin accumulations because the detoxification process doesn't run as calmly. And then I have a lot of inflammation. Almost every second illness is due to inflammation. And then I don't have good wound healing either. Or I heard a speech of, what's his name? Joachim Mutter. Oh yeah, Joachim Mutter. He said, we basically get sunburn much faster. This is basically because we have significantly more free radicals on the surface of the skin. And of course, these are all aspects. And at this point, they are against nature. Perhaps I'd like to share with you, dear viewers, a very brief quote by Dr. Probst. And please listen to it. So, you have heard of what is known as oxidative stress. Oxidative stress means lack of electrons. That's unhealthy. We have to flood the body with electrons. We heard it too, quite clearly, flooding with electrons. The body has to be flooded with electrons. One can actually imagine that the human body is a battery and is simply fed with electricity. And it's important for the electrons, but also for the atomic nuclei, that they have the right spin. And here, I bring the native information back to the point that it has the right spin. I'll give a little example of how important that is. Most people don't know about oxygen, that a distinction is made between singlet and triplet oxygen. So, one oxygen atom. And for the one, the atoms are vibrating in phase, and with the other, they vibrate in opposite directions. And the singlet is highly reactive. The mitochondria need it for the energy production of ATP. In the air, we have triplet oxygen. And that's exactly what you need to breathe. The only difference are the spins. And it's the same with electrons. If electrons have the right spin, they do the right job. Constructive and otherwise it's degradative. If I now want more information about this wound healing process, or scar removal or scar healing process accelerator, is there a platform where you can read more information? I would go to quantisana.ch. I often check it out if I need additional information. Great. So, thank you very much. It's always exciting to talk to you when we go from A to B to Y and jump back and forth. Please, forgive us for this, dear viewers. The aim today was really to show you that you can accelerate wound healing processes selectively. And the nice thing about it is when the cell membrane potential simply has more energy again, then this excruciating pain goes back much, much faster. And if we don't always focus on the pain, but on the healing process, then you do something good for yourself and get well faster too. At least that's what I hope. That's what I wish for all of us. That it works with simple means with electrons. I wish you all the best. Stay safe. See you next time.